Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Try to Talk. I've been really excited for this episode this week, mainly because I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of use out of this episode. No pressure at all. So I'm going to introduce our guest. I'm going to big you up here as well, by the way. So you probably... She is an award-winning mental health expert with over 100,000 followers on her social platforms. She writes regularly for the Daily Mail and the Metro. You're probably going to tell me some more things as well. And she has her own book coming out very, very soon, which I'm sure we'll hear about. Dr Lalitaa Suglani.
You did really well. I'm really proud of you.
Did I miss anything?
To be fair, there were a few bits and pieces. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But no, I'm joking.
Okay.
You did well. You did really well. Well done. Yeah.
Thank you. A little patronising, I feel. Anyway.
It is. Should we just let people know it is a Friday?
It is a Friday, 5:30. It's been a long day, hasn't it? So we'll try our best to make this conversation a useful one. Yeah?
We're alright.
We're alright.
Yeah.
We're alright. I want to ask you the first question.
Okay.
And I don't actually know this, surprisingly, because me and Lalitaa have known each other for quite a while now. But why psychology? Why did you start psychology? What made you interested in it?
Honestly, for me, it's more about how people work. I grew up in a family where there was always things going on, always things happening, loads of people around. And I was really interested in how people would communicate, how people would talk to one another, but then also growing up in a sort of an Asian family and then going into a school where norms and people were very different. So I was always very intrigued. I was always very curious. And I actually ended up studying psychology accidentally. Because I I fell into it accidentally.
What did you think you were doing?
I had it was really fascinating. So I had a choice. I went to this there were these introduction classes, and I went to one class and it was history and politics, and a few of my friends were doing that, and I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Then I went to this psychology one, and the tutor, she said dolphins sleep one brain hemisphere at a time, which I found really interesting. And I was like, what? Like, this is really interesting. And that's why I chose psychology, because of that fact.
That's actually why you chose. For that simple fact.
Because of dolphins. Because of that one fact. I was like, this is really interesting. And I felt like it just spoke to me. Like, it was very deep, very interesting. And I was like, okay, I want to do this. And then I went on to study at university. Then I did my master's. And then I wanted to study it further. So I continued.
Yeah. Did you expect, I suppose, when you started originally to love it as much as you do?
No. When I remember when I did my master's, that was the first time as part of the course I had to have my own therapy.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to talk about anything. There's nothing going on for me. Like, I don't need to go into therapy. And I went into therapy thinking, I'm just going to tick the box and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I need to do. And when I went in and started talking, I was just like, this is really interesting, because the spotlight's all on you. And probably the first time in my life I've had the spotlight on me, and I've had someone looking into my world, and I'm like, oh my God, this person's picking out all these different things. And I found it fascinating. And earlier, like, things would come up of my childhood, my attachments, and it helped me to make sense of why I was the way that I was, how I interacted with people. But it took me a few attempts to find the right therapist as well. Okay. I know the first therapist I went to, I wasn't particularly comfortable with. And they kept looking at their watch. So they might have been doing that for whatever reason, but it just made me feel really uncomfortable. So I shut down. But when I explored it with the next therapist, this whole idea of shutting down and what was going on for me, it was me not feeling good enough. So I've been on my own journey. I don't know what the question was, but yeah. I forgot. I'm talking.
Friday. But no, that is right what you're saying about therapists, because I've had therapy myself, and there was definitely 2 or 3. I mean, I think I went through 3 or 4 actually therapists before I found the right therapist for me that worked for me, and very similar looking at the time, looking at a clock on the wall, kind of it makes you feel like, are they a little bit disinterested in what I'm having to say?
It's so interesting that that's how what's going on for us, because if that's what's happening in that therapy space and where with like our friends or where with people at work, it's almost like noticing that same feeling that comes up, because there's some people that you're with and you're like, oh, okay, they're not really paying attention or they're not really bothered or interested, but we tend to just shut down around them rather than communicating and actually asking, are you okay, did you understand that? Because I think sometimes that's where then you've shut down because you've made that assumption, but they might just be like hungover, or they might be in their own little world,
a baby, have had a very little sleep, or you never know, do you?
Exactly. But this is the interesting thing of how we work as humans.
Yeah, and that's really what got you actually into it, how humans do work and how they process everything. So I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. You talk about, like, if anyone that knows kind of your work and what you talk about quite a bit, you talk about your inner child quite a lot, because that has a big reflection on how we are now as adults. How was your childhood like? Because you seem very self-aware, very self-secure, but I don't know, have you always been?
You think I'm self-secure? Wow. No, I'm joking.
You come across it like it.
It's a lot of work.
Some days.
Some days. I'm just a normal, imperfect human being, and I think sometimes people put like therapists on pedestals and they think that we have it all together and that we know everything, but we don't. We're just like everyone else. We have our own lives. We've been through things, and things come up for us. So I still have my own ongoing therapy, and I think it's really important because things do come up week to week. With interactions, and it's important that you are aware of, hang on, what's going on here for me, what's happening in my internal world, but it helps you to grow. So next time you're in that situation, you're managing it in a very different way. So I think for me, growing up, I was very confused. I didn't really understand things, and I was the why child. I was the one that was always curious, that wanted to know more, and growing up in a family where it was very different with females and males. So I was always very confused why females were treated in a very different way to males, and that would have an impact on my self-worth, because I had two little brothers and they would be asked to eat first and with my grandparents, and it was a very different world. So I'd go into school and we were told we weren't allowed to cut our hair until a certain age, and we weren't allowed to do certain things until we were a certain age, or almost like when you get married you can do this, or when you do this that's what's going to happen. So there was always rules, or when you get to this point, that's when then you can do things. So that's what you lived for, that's what you thought you needed to live for, until you got to a point where you started questioning these things, and you're like, but hang on, but why? And I was the why child. So I was, as a child, I suppressed that part of me. But as I became more and more aware of mind, body, and how we work, and reflection, and I was in these therapy sessions, I started to want to know more, want to understand culture, want to understand patterns of behavior, understand why I suppressed this part of me, and also then moving forward, trying to connect back to my inner child and understand what my inner child went through. So she felt like she wasn't good enough, she felt like she didn't have a voice, she felt like she wasn't important. So all of these things, they play out in your relationships, and the way that you present yourself as an adult. But when you sort of connect and reconnect back with that inner child and really just support that inner child, rather than the inner child holding a glass and saying, can someone please fill my glass and make me feel good enough? Because that's essentially what you learn. You have to learn that other people are going to fill your glass. It's like, no, I've got a glass and I can fill this. But I didn't know that. I didn't have the tools.
So your culture and how you were grown, like brought up, where you felt like suppressed and you felt like you didn't have a voice, has that made you want to work harder or be better, or have you actually just thought, I want to know more about myself?
I think for a long time I would be more of, I need to I live for others. I was like, I need to make sure everyone else around me is happy, because that's what growing up I was taught. Make sure everyone's happy. If people come to the house, make sure it's all about everyone else. That's what it is about. It's about what do people think out there. How does culture, don't bring shame to the house. Don't bring shame to the front door. So you would always present as being, I need to be enough. I need to be good enough. I need to be good enough. So you do things, I need to get a good education. I need to show that I'm good enough because I don't want to bring shame to the family. So that's the big part of growing up. So you're doing things constantly for other people. And I suppose when you realign back into and understand your journey, well, my journey, when I've gone back and I've understood, it's like, I don't need to do this for other people. And actually, what will people think? What will people think? And why is it so important that we hold so much judgment on what other people think? So when I see this and when I hear this now, I'm like, but it doesn't matter, because why are we living for others? And it's others' views. So I might be talking to you now, we're having a conversation, and I'm like, oh, Rob, what do you think about, I don't know, football? And then you say, oh yeah, I love football. And now I'm like, oh, I need to know more about football now. But you might just be saying that because, I don't know, you're just saying it.
Yeah. I might not actually love it.
Yeah, do you like it, by the way?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So anyway, that's what might happen. So there's a miscommunication there. So I'm assuming something that isn't actually there. So now I feel like next time I meet you, I need to know all about football. Yeah. It's a really bad example, but what I mean is, So,
you get the premise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely understand what you mean. But do you know you're saying like, you feel like you always had to, you weren't good enough and you always had to be good enough and you had to try harder. Do you still have some days now where you feel like, I don't feel good at, like imposter syndrome and stuff like that, when you're going into doing things? Do you feel like that quite often now?
Yeah. Like, it doesn't take over my life, but I feel it. Like, I know it's there. So it's almost like I have like this, if we think of it like the angel and the devil, it's like the imposter syndrome sits there. I don't get rid of the imposter syndrome, because the imposter syndrome has allowed me to be who I am, but it doesn't take over. It's not the most powerful part of my brain. It's there. I know it's there, and I can regulate it, and I hear it, and I know what it's trying to say. But it also, I understand that it comes from fear. So there might be some days where there's a lot going on, and I wake up and I know that I have to go and talk, or I have to go and do something. In the background, I've got the little imposter sitting there like, oh my God, what are people going to think? You're talking about this and you're saying this, and what's this? But it's like, it's learning to manage it and not letting that become the louder part of you, because that's where then you feel the anxiety, and then the anxiety comes over. So for me, it's not that you can ever get rid of that part, but you become stronger in yourself.
From a I don't know if you know this or not, but from a scientific point of view, you learn those behaviours as a child, and then you carry them into later life, or those feelings, emotions. Do you actually ever get rid of them, or do you have to learn to just manage them?
I love the way you use the word. You just have to like learn to live with them, because it seems like it's really exhausting, and it's like, it's hard work that we have to learn to live with it. But it's also, I feel that when the anxiety is there, it's learning to communicate. It's learning the language of your emotions, because as a kid, well, for me, I didn't know that I was feeling anxious. I didn't know that I was feeling worried, or I was feeling sad. And I was always like, just get on with it, just get on with it, just get on with it. So I never really understood the language of what I need. Whereas now, I understand my feelings. So I have reflection space, and I think reflection, meditation, is so important to have that space away from busy life, because that's where then you get to really just touch base with where you're at and what's going on. But if I'm feeling a little bit, I don't know, anxious about something, then I can give myself what I need. So I might be like, actually, I'm just going to go on a long walk this weekend, or I'm going to do something that I know is good for me. But also not just doing things to like cover up the anxiety, but also regulating it and making sense of why is it there and what's coming up.
Yeah. And it, don't take this wrong, but it's quite refreshing to hear you say that you get anxious. We can, I'm sure, loads of people watching it. But you do. But when you hear a doctor of psychology, you think, oh, she must have all her stuff together. Like, she must not, be absolutely...
I hear that so much. I hear that. I'm like, well, how do I get rid of it? I'm like, you're not getting rid of it. It's gonna be, you're not getting rid of it. We just need to make friends with it. But it just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like, the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can get bigger and bigger and bigger the more we ignore it. But actually, when we address it and we understand it's an elephant, it's okay, it's safe. It's easier to manage.
Yeah. That's one thing that I learned that, someone told me before, a psychologist told me, is that you befriend your anxiety, name it. I don't name it, but, say thank you for making you aware how you're feeling. And I think that's one of the biggest things that came for me and was one of the most powerful things anyway.
It's like, have you watched Inside Out? No, it's like it's a it's like, what is this? It's a cartoon and it's little characters, but there's fear, there's joy, and it's interesting because that's how you can imagine your little emotions in some ways, and your little characters. So it can help because you externalize it. It's still a part of you, but you externalize it, so it helps you to manage it.
Yeah.
Did you work on Inside Out? Are you just trying to
No,
promote
I
it?
didn't. No, I didn't actually, no.
By the way.
Well, just adding that in there. No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. I'm just checking. Obviously, you've got some interesting things coming up in the pipeline, and I know you talk a lot about high functioning anxiety.
Yeah.
And for the reason of this podcast, I want to know more about what it is and how can you challenge it.
This comes up a lot and so many people relate to it. So every time I post something about high functioning anxiety, I get so many different messages, emails coming through and saying, I really relate to it. So for me, it's about helping people to understand how it shows up. So high functioning anxiety is externally, we show people I'm organized, I'm got it all together. I've got, why are you smiling? Like, I just said 2 points. So yeah, I've got it all together. I'm efficient. I'm hardworking. I'm all these different things. But behind the scenes, you're really stressed out. You're overworked. You're over responsible. You're feeling exhausted, tired. But people don't get to see that side. And it's like, I always explain it like like a duck or a swan, and the swan is just like gliding. And when you see like the swan, they're just gliding along the water. And they look really like they're relaxed, they're calm, but underneath they're like paddling. And that's exactly how I envision high functioning anxiety, because behind the scenes, there's so much going on, but we don't share that. We don't show that part to other people. Instead, we've learned to be high functioning because we don't want people to judge us from that perspective. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think we were talking about this the other day about me playing golf or training? I can't remember. It was one or the other. But saying that I feel really guilty.
You said when you were lying down.
Lying down, that was it, meditating.
Yeah. So when you were meditating in the day and you took 10 minutes out, you felt guilty.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
No, I mean, I don't know. I do, yeah. I feel like I should be doing something more productive.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you're gonna say. That having time for yourself is productive.
Yeah.
But it's and I think a lot of people probably would relate to that as well. That being just lying down for half an hour in a day. Although yes, I do it. I do feel guilty for it, and I don't know why that is really.
And I think it's sometimes like it's a belief that you grow up with, is that you have to keep working, and in order to work, you have to be working all hours in order to be successful or in order to be good enough. So you're always focused on I need to be, and when you stop it in your mind, you're like, but I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. I'm a bad person for not getting it done, or so it always links back down to I am. So I am. What are you? If you're not working, what does that make you as a person? So do we associate success, hard work, to how we are as a person and how we show up day to day?
I think most people would think that success is determined by the amount of time they put into work, wouldn't they? When it's not. It's not. No, but it's not. No, I was kind of asking you, but that's not right.
No, what makes you think it's not right?
Because if you're not performing at 100% yourself, and you don't feel 100% in yourself, sure, we may not feel ever 100%, but if you don't take enough time on yourself to go to the gym or to meditate or to learn and read and do all the things that we should be doing every single day, eventually you're probably going to burn out or simply not enjoy your life or the person that you've become.
Yeah, because you said should be, like we should be doing these things, but who tells us that we have to be doing these things, that you need to get up at 5 a.m, you need to then go to the gym, you then need to go to work, you then should be working 10 hours, because if you don't do all of these things, then you're not going to be successful. Sometimes I think we put so much expectation on ourselves that we should be doing this, next thing, and it's comparison, and it can also mean that we then feel that we're not doing enough. We should be doing more, and that's why we're not as successful as we should be. So it's almost like, what are we trying to chase, and are we really looking after ourselves and our mind, body? Are we really reflecting on our intentions of the day? Because you can keep yourself being busy, but are you really focusing on the things that you really want to do? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's really interesting, because from my perspective, I always look at it like, to be happy in yourself, you need to be going to the gym, you need to be meditating, you need to be going for a walk.
But what do them things do for you?
Obviously they release, certain chemicals, endorphins, make you feel good, make you feel happy. But for some people, it might not do the same thing. And I've never actually thought about it like that.
Yeah, I know people that hate it.
Them, you need to, because it can make you feel better. It actually might make them feel more anxious.
Everyone's different, aren't they?
Yeah.
Everyone is different, and everyone's toolbox to what their life or how they look after themselves is always different. So what works for you will work differently for me, and it's okay for that. But when you hear things on social media, you hear other people talking about things, it's also managing your expectations and just stopping and reflecting and being able to understand, okay, does me going to the gym, waking up at 5 a.m, do I get enough sleep? Does 5 a.m. work for me? Or do I prefer after work? Do I prefer in between? Do I even like going to the gym? What other things is there that are available that I would enjoy doing, rather than forcing myself because everyone else is doing it and everyone else is like getting benefits from it, and scientifically like you get your chemicals that you need, and so can you hear how you can end up putting that pressure on yourself?
Definitely.
Because you feel that everyone else is doing it, I should be doing that as well.
Definitely.
And then you feel like you're not good enough because you didn't wake up today at 5 a.m. Or you went out with your friends and you had a drink and it was like, oh, I had a drink, but everyone else is not drinking at the minute. Like, what? I'm a bad person for that.
Yeah. It's putting too much of an expectation on yourself, pretty much.
Yeah. And when we stop and we're with our thoughts and we stop and we really just reflect on what is it that makes us feel good, or what are some of the things that we enjoy doing, that's where we get real clarity. That's where we get real clarity of what is it that works for us, what is it that doesn't work for us, what do we feel. But sometimes we don't give ourselves that because we just keep ourselves so busy. Even like during COVID, that's where some people just came to a complete standstill, and they've really struggled because they were in their own heads. They didn't have work to do, there was no distractions, and they've really struggled with their mental health, their well-being. And you weren't allowed to go out. Boris gave 30 minutes, so that's all you were allowed to do, and it was really hard, really hard, especially if you were furloughed as well. You had all this time, but you had so much going on up here that you've never addressed or understood because you were just busy.
Yeah, I love talking to you about this. I actually do. I could talk about it all day. And it's just so interesting because actually when you talk about things like this, you do start to, even like, being really passionate about it, you do start to think about it in different ways as well. But like, are there any, I don't want to say generic tools, but are there any tools that you would say often work for everyone? Yeah,
so there's two things I would say. So number one, I would always say is gratitude. And I know it's a very simple thing, but it works. It works when we apply it and we're consistent with it. So again, going back to the glass being half empty, half full. If I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, but I don't have this, and I don't have this, and I don't have this, I'm constantly seeking the things that I don't have, but then I'm not focusing on the things that I do have. So there's so many things in the world that we have, like we have a roof over our head, but why? Why are we so grateful for that? You have your siblings, why are you grateful for that? You have your family, why are you grateful for that? But the why is really important because it helps you to go deeper into understanding, not just naming things, but it's like you really try and understand the meaning to why you're grateful to have it in your life. And when we start looking at the glass being full rather than, but we don't have this, we don't have this, we don't have this, it's like those things, if we want these things, yes, we can have a plan, we can strategize, and we can get to these things that we want, if it's within our expectation. But we're also looking at what we do have, because sometimes we're chasing, and we're constantly trying to aim for this next thing, and we don't just stop and reflect on what we do have in life, and also just our well-being. Because I think social media isn't just bad, but we are on it. And if you're feeling down, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling upset, and then you end up scrolling through social media, what's going to happen? You're going to look at everyone else is happy. Oh, look, people are on holidays. Oh, people are so happy. It must be me. There's something wrong with me. And it just keeps fueling that same negative sort of cycle of there's something wrong with me. I'm different. I don't have a good life. And we keep looking at the things that we don't have rather than the things that we do. So that's number one, the gratitude. And then number two, I always find journaling helps, because with journaling, what you get is reflection. So everyone journals in a different way. Some people can journal by coloring in. Some people journal by drawing things. Some people journal by going through certain questions. So I think it's about what works for you. What works for you in terms of journaling. Some people just want to think about it. They don't want to write anything down because that doesn't feel right for them. So again, really step back and ask yourself, what would work for you when it comes to journaling? Do you want to go through questions so there's a bit of structure? Do you want to just free flow? Do you want to draw pictures? Do you want to color in and just be very mindful in that space? What is it that you want? Because when you journal, you allow yourself to just stop and pause and be with your thoughts. That's the power of journaling, is just being with your own thoughts and dedicating that space to understand what's going on.
And would you always say it's better to put it down on paper in any way or form than to keep it in your head?
Some people I've come across, they haven't found it useful to write out. So they're okay with it in their minds. Some people love writing it out. So again, I feel like everyone's different. I can't put like this is the main way of doing it, because it's finding what works for you.
Right, cool. It's been a really good conversation. I think we will end it there. But I want to end on one question that I ask everyone now is, if you were to give yourself as a child a bit of feedback, a bit of encouragement, a word of advice, what would it be?
Good one. I didn't know any of the questions. No. I was like, okay. I would say to my inner child, don't dim yourself down. Don't dim yourself down because you want to try and fit in and you want to try and please everyone else. Be yourself, and it's okay to be yourself.
I like it. Shine like the star you're meant to be. Yeah.
How beautiful is that? Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure everyone that's watched this has gotten a lot out of it. Oh, and just before we end, big one.
Oh yeah.
As well as this, Dr Lalitaa is working with Try Wellness.
Yes.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about that quickly?
When we, I think it follows through nicely actually from the journaling and the reflecting. What I found is that so many people, they struggle with the reflection side. So what I've said to Rob is, and what we're doing here is we're focusing on workshops and classes where we focus on mind-body reflection. So it's really understanding and stopping and pausing with what's going on in terms of your mind, what's going on in terms of your body, and being able to reflect and let go of the things that you don't really need to carry around. You don't need to be taking with you. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing more of.
Awesome. There'll be more information about that coming out very shortly. But for today, thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.